I'm here talking exclusively to the buzz at Female Fetish Federation, and my name is Cupcake Sinclair. I'm a professional submissive and a fetish model here in Los Angeles, California. Let me tell you a tiny bit about the journey that got me to where I am today. Growing up, I was an avid reader. I had no friends, and one of the books that I stumbled across was by Marquis de Sade. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, he's kind of a bit on the extreme side. He writes these, older books about, women who are in peril and devious things that happen to them. And stumbling across him at a very young and impressionable age, I felt like I connected pretty well. Having that seed start sprouting in my mind, I did all the research that I could to see if I could find scenarios like that I could get into in real life on my own. I came across sites like FetLife, where I began to become a bigger part of my BDSM and fetish community. I attended all of the classes and workshops that I could, and of course I partied as much as I could with all of the other lifestyle players that I could find access to. After a couple of years of doing that, however, I became a professional submissive for real-time sessions. I really enjoyed what I was doing in my personal playtime, but I also felt like being a professional would not only expose me to a wider knowledge of different types of fetishes and kink activities, but it could also help me reach out to people who might not be able to interact in the fetish scene in their own community for whatever reason that they had. After a couple of years of being a professional submissive in real time, I also thought it was time to branch out into the video sphere of doing this work, because just like I mentioned earlier, I understand that not everyone could come in person, in real life, and the more that I'm able to show different nuances about fetish and kink and, express my own personal pleasure and hopefully have other people connect with mine, the more beneficial I felt it could be as a large. I think education is everything. It sounds absolutely cliche, but it's true. Especially in the community, a lot of people will get down on vanilla people who happen to stumble across 50 Shades of Grey or that new show on Netflix, Bonding. However, we all had to start somewhere, and for a lot of vanilla people, this is their entry into what could perhaps be the most important journey of their lives in a sexual manner. So, instead of downing people, having a lot more accessible workshops and classes, having more articles out there that, while we don't completely get down on fictionalized kink scenarios, we do offer our own input as people who live the lifestyle and who are professionals and do have a safer understanding of how these scenarios should actually be happening, would be really important, so that way people understand that, the same as if you watch a show like House or Grey's Anatomy and not everything is completely accurate, you're not taking it all completely at face value. Yes, it can be entertaining, but it's not the rule book, and the more that we can let people know that we're not these imaginary, deviant beings out in the fictionalized world, the more that people can take their own steps to learn and educate themselves on their own and, use those fictionalized entrances as their starting point, but not their end-all be-all. I think that I have learned that while being submissive is great, it also doesn't mean that we're necessarily doormats. It's a wider misconception, and while there are all sorts of different umbrellas of submissives, just like there's all sorts of different types of dominance, submissives can embody a wide variety of things, whether it's high protocol, whether it's service orientated, whether it's a bratty sub, and at the end of the day, it takes two to have some sort of play engagement, to have some sort of kink dynamic. While the dominant is the one trusted to successfully lead a scene and be, knowledgeable about the things that they're doing to their sub, it doesn't mean that the sub necessarily has to completely roll over and take it while it comes to negotiations and their feelings and making sure that both sides feel valid and heard and enjoy the process that they're going through. After all, we call it playing for a reason. Being part of the fetish world is just how important communication and negotiation can be. There's so many fun and interesting and sexy deviant things that are at our fingertips and disposals, But you won't have the best time that you possibly can if you're not willing to speak up about what you like and what you don't like. If you don't talk about the things that you're into and that you secretly fantasize, then you can never make them come to life. And on the other hand, you shouldn't have to feel pressured into being things that you don't want to be or participating in activities that you might not be interested in. The longer that I'm in the fetish community and the BDSM world, the more that I recognize that there's so many different categories of kinksters, and it's beautiful because that means that you don't have to fit the mold even within crazy fetish fringe people like us. Well, it's going to sound a little cliche, but I feel like the first rule that I would introduce if I were the ruler of my own country would be allowing sex work to be decriminalized. Sex work plays an important part of our community, whether people recognize it or not. And so being able to give sex workers bigger access to the resources that they need, to allow clients to see them without fear, to allow what we do to be destigmatized, it could lead to a healthier, more communicative, and freer society, in my personal opinion. So that's what I would be the most excited about enacting if I was the ruler of my own country. That is a question that we definitely get a lot as sex workers. Once again, going back to breaking stigmas and so on about what we do, a lot of people are like, you must be keeping secrets from your partner, or how could they ever love you, or nobody would ever want to take you seriously. And I am here just to dispel that myth. For me personally, I am polyamorous, which means that I have more than one person that I have a deep, loving, intimate, emotionally bonding relationship with. So, that being said, one of my partners is not in sex work. However, he is very sex worker aware. He advocates for decriminalization and sex workers' needs and voices. One of my other partners is a sex worker, and he is the owner of a website and creates his own fetish content, and that's helpful because we can work together as a team. And it also means that if I have, bad days or issues where I just need to vent to somebody who also is in the industry and understands, I have someone that I can talk to and relate to. But both of them are incredibly supportive to me. I think one of the things that annoys me would be, I guess, going back to one of the points that I mentioned earlier about the conception that submissives are just a prop or a doormat or just someone who lies there and takes it. As a professional submissive and a fetish model, I have spent close to 6 or 7 years now doing this, working, developing skill sets, learning how to communicate and negotiate and make the person who is topping me feel welcomed and okay with expressing who they are as an individual and in terms of their sexuality and wants and needs. As a bottom, it is my responsibility to know when I need to call red, to know different varieties of protocols and play styles and approaches to different scenes, because as we all know, there is no one size fits all for having a scene. And so one of the things that annoys me is definitely the conception that submissives are just laying there taking it. Just in the same way that tops spend years probably learning how to whip and flog and do the things that they do on the giving end, submissives also definitely train themselves on how to be on the receiving end of such things. One of my biggest fears as a sex worker is definitely with the advent of laws like Sesta Fosta and a lot of mainstream society becoming more and more unwilling to understand about sex work and the nuances of what we do and what is and isn't sex work. A lot of the ways that we advertise and are able to express ourselves are slowly becoming more and more limited. For those of you on the outside, one example of that you might have heard of would have been the banning of adult content on Tumblr. For a lot of models who are independent, who aren't able to work with mainstream companies and get hired easily, for cam girls, for those who do things on their own in terms of filming and content producing, that was definitely a harder hit for them. Another example of that would be, sites like Twitter, where sometimes you're allowed to get away with things and sometimes on the flick of a dime, just because someone reports you because of being a sex worker, your entire account can be deleted and then you have no more access to fellow models and you're not able to promote and advertise the way that you need to. So with the shutdown of social media sites and their barring of sex workers and adult content, it becomes a lot harder to freely advertise the way that we need to in order for our livelihoods to work, but also in order for people on the outside of what we do to understand what we do. And that definitely scares me, the circle of what we do becoming smaller and smaller because of people's fears and ignorance becoming larger and larger. Well, some of the main works that I do involve extreme acts of masochism. So I would really like to be remembered for that. I have cultivated what I do over a variety of years, and I want people to know that no matter what you're doing, no matter whether you are doing crazy, extreme fetish acts or, you're just working up the nerve to tell someone that you've admired for a long time that you are really digging them. I would like to be remembered for me being able to be an example for people to face their fears and recognize that everything's just a moment in time and that you're a lot stronger than you actually realize. Thank you for having me. Bye.